My CEO seat was stolen and given to my brother. Now I've joined the one uncle they hated most, became CFO, and their company is falling apart. 9 years of loyalty, and they gave my position to a 23-year-old with zero experience. So I joined the one man they hated most, and I'm taking their team with me. Hello, I'm a 30-year-old lady who was just cut off by my family since I left the family business and went against my uncle, who is retiring this year. I'm here to ask if I'm in the wrong. So, for perspective, my father, who would have been 63 this year, had 2 younger brothers, Blake and George, 59 and 56 years old, and they had all inherited my grandfather's real estate firm. He had thought that the 3 brothers would operate the establishment as co-owners, and everything would be okay. But 6 years after my grandfather retired, my uncle George decided to leave the firm and start his own business. He was also cut off from his family because no one approved his decision to compete with his own brothers in business. So, for the past 16 years, no one in the family has spoken to him, nor have they acknowledged his existence. They pretend he was never a member of the family at all. I had learned to do the same thing. Anyway, my father passed away 3 years ago from bilateral kidney failure. His health had already deteriorated prior to the incident, and he had been teaching me to take over in case he became bedridden. Obviously, no one expected him to die, but it was fortunate that I was prepared to step into his shoes and take on his responsibilities at the company. I hadn't only been doing his work and assisting my uncle Blake in running the company for the past 3 years. In fact, since graduating from business school, I had been working with my father and uncle to learn the ropes in the hopes of someday becoming a partner in the firm. So it had been about 9 years since I had started working here, and I had certainly anticipated becoming a partner in the firm soon, as that was what my father had desired. However, around 10 days ago, I learned that my uncle had decided to make his son a partner, leaving me as the CFO. When my father was alive, he was CEO, and my uncle was CFO. Following his death, my uncle assumed the post of CEO, and I was elevated to CFO. So, if someone was supposed to take my uncle's job after he retires in a few years, shouldn't it be me? My cousin Dean had never been in the photo before, so this action caught me completely off guard. He's 23 years old and graduated barely a year ago. He has an economics degree but no practical or hands-on experience, and more importantly, he is far too young to be a partner in the firm. He has not paid his dues, and I am confident that he does not deserve it any more than I do. So, naturally, I was really unhappy when I learned about this. I didn't even find out from my uncle directly. It was my mother who told me that she had just learned from Dean's mother that I had turned down the opportunity to be a partner in the firm, and that my uncle was now offering it to Dean. When my mother told me about it, I immediately phoned my uncle because we hadn't discussed it before, and I assumed it was a joke. However, when we spoke on the phone, he told me that he was seriously considering making Dean the CEO of the company and a partner in the firm because he was retiring in a few months. I was astonished, and I reminded him that Dean had never worked before. He'd spent the last year figuring himself out and exploring, so he was unskilled and unqualified for the job. And then my uncle told me that presumably, this is where I come in, because since I'll be mentoring him, he won't have anything to worry about. So it is not as if I am no longer needed in the organization. He still needs me to handle everything until Dean adjusts, and I will continue to serve as the company's chief financial officer. But I wasn't okay with it. I informed him that I had worked really hard over the last 9 years and deserved the recognition that I was due. Dean did not deserve this position, and I made it known that I was dissatisfied with the choice. So, if he decided to make Dean a partner in the firm and CEO, I would stand down from my position and leave the company as well. My uncle tried to tell me that I was overreacting, that he was only doing this to protect Dean's future, and that he would not settle for anything less than the position of CEO. He didn't want to leave the firm as my uncle George did, so this was his only alternative, and he wanted me to understand. He even tried to reassure me by claiming that Dean would only be the company's nominal CEO, but I would be in charge, and he knew Dean would respect me. I attempted to bargain with him. I told him I was willing to compromise for my position as CFO, but I wanted him to make me a partner in the company. And he stated he wasn't sure if he could do it since he needed to talk to Dean first. But I didn't care. I'd put in the effort, and I wanted to be CEO and partner, or even simply a partner. So he could do it or I'd leave. It was an ultimatum. When my uncle and I got into a debate over this, he eventually informed me that we lived in a free nation, so I could do whatever I wanted. But his mind was already made up. He had also addressed this with the board members, and he planned to make his announcement within the next few days. His mind was set up, and I had 2 options. Cope with it or leave as I had promised. It was a difficult day for me to find out where I stood with my uncle, because I had always assumed we had a wonderful connection. But plainly, when it came to our working connection, I had misjudged our closeness. It's not surprising either. Dean has always been privileged, so I'm not surprised that my uncle selected him over me. This is his flesh and blood, so I could never compete. Anyway, I was really furious by the outcome, and my mother suggested that I get a lawyer and pursue them legally. But I did not want to do that. Instead, I devised a better strategy that would thoroughly irritate them. I'm sure most of you can guess what I did next, but for those who don't, I sent an email to my Uncle George that day. I briefed him on everything that had occurred and stated that I would be willing to work for him right now if he wanted me to. I didn't want to sit around and mope over what I had lost. The only thing on my mind right now was getting back at my uncle, so I didn't think twice about contacting Uncle George. He responded to me within 24 hours. He stated that he was prepared to offer me the position of Chief Financial Officer and that he would be willing to elevate me to Chief Executive Officer in a few years after his retirement. He had agreed to my terms for making me a partner in the firm since I was willing to tell him everything I know about my company to help him succeed. So we actually got to meet in person a few days ago, and it was a lot of fun. I just had to shut him out of my life because my parents and the rest of my family requested it, but aside from that, I've never had a negative connection with Uncle George. In fact, he had always been the fun uncle, and we were very close until I was 15 years old. But then the feud occurred, and he was isolated, and I never spoke to him again, until today. When I was little, I was never informed exactly why Uncle George broke away from the family. Even now, when I met him, he refused to discuss it. But it was his decision, and I needed to respect it. However, he told me that he was amazed that Uncle Blake had pulled off something like this since, when my father was alive, he would never have attempted such a thing. Anyway, he was pleased that it had worked out in his favor, and he expressed his desire to have me on board because he had only heard positive things about me. They had maintained a close eye on us and our business because they were our main competitors. He stated that he was aware of my significant contributions to the company and was excited to have me on his side this time. He also told me that, unlike Uncle Blake, he did not have any children, so I had nothing to worry about there either. We finished everything, and I resigned the same day. Uncle Blake seemed unaffected by my resignation. I texted him formally to inform him that I would not be present for the next 2 weeks, as he had stated unequivocally that the company would function perfectly without me. He assured me he was fine with it and that he already had replacements lined up, so I didn't have to worry about my job. And that was all. I didn't speak with him after that. However, yesterday Uncle George and I finally shared a photo together to honor the fact that I was now joining him. I went out to dinner with the team to meet and talk with a handful of other upper-level executives in his organization before starting work with them. To say that my family is currently crashing and burning would be an understatement. Because ever since I posted yesterday night, I've been inundated with text messages, voicemails, and phone calls. I haven't responded to anyone, but I can sense that people are upset. Uncle Blake is furious and has already labeled me a traitor, threatening that I will pay the consequences of this decision. He can do his absolute worst. I've also been denounced by many other members of the family, which I find weird because, based on the text they sent, they appear to already know that I did all of this because I was passed over for a partner in the firm and was replaced by Dean. But if they did not speak out against the injustice of what was done to me back then, they have no right to condemn me now. My mother is the only person whose opinion matters to me. When I spoke with her this morning, she didn't seem pleased with my decision either. That surprised me because she had only a few days before insisted that I hire a lawyer to pursue my uncle and collect what is rightfully mine. But now she believes I've gone too far. She told me that there is a lot of history with Uncle George that I am unaware of, and she does not believe it is suitable for me to know. That was pretty frustrating because if they weren't going to tell me why Uncle George had been excluded from the family, I don't think I could decide whether or not to trust him. And, as a mature woman, I believe I am capable of handling the truth, and they should not be afraid of me. So far, based on his actions, he has been extremely courteous to me, and I see no reason to cut him off. But, in any case, my mother stated that the family was quite furious with me, and she was also unhappy about it. But if I'd made up my mind, there was little she could do to change it. I tried to speak with her, but she simply hung off and stated she needed to understand what was going on. So now I'm very conflicted about what's going on. Am I the asshole for joining our competitors after my uncle declined to make me a partner in the firm and chose his son instead? Edit. Hello. So several folks were perplexed as to how I got the job at Uncle George's company so quickly, and it was actually pure luck. His CFO was retiring in a few months anyway, and he had been hunting for a replacement. Fortunately, I emailed him at the perfect time, and that is how I got this opportunity. It's as if the stars and planets have aligned for me too. Also, some of you wanted to know how things were with my Uncle George before he was cut off from the family. And, to be honest, they were never that bad. According to what I saw growing up, my father, Uncle Blake, and Uncle George were always quite close. I knew they had a tremendous dispute, which was why Uncle George left the corporation to start his own business. But until now, I'm not sure what this was about. Nobody wants to talk about it, therefore I can't offer you the information because I don't have it. However, my connection with him was always positive, and I believe I noted this in my original post as well. Even now, when I contacted him via email, he responded politely and warmly. I'm not sure why my family has such a negative opinion of him. They've dubbed him a variety of things. They've described him as conniving, narcissistic, egoistic, and so on. However, every time I've engaged with him, I've never felt like he was any of those things. I'm just perplexed about who to believe. I don't want to make the same mistake of trusting someone again after what happened with Uncle Blake. I don't want the same thing to happen to Uncle George, so I have to be extra careful about these things. And, since my mother isn't pleased with me right now, I'm not sure who to turn to for advice. I can't discuss this with my pals since it is too personal and complicated. Update 1. Hello, it's been 3 days since folks discovered that I was going to be working with Uncle George, and after the first outrage, they've simply stopped talking to me. I suppose this is fair enough. Now that I'm identified with Uncle George, they're treating me in the same way they've treated him. I honestly have no idea what occurred between them all those years ago, but I know which side I want to be on, and I can't go back. To be honest, the history of their relationship is irrelevant to me. I can't just quit and go back to working with Uncle Blake right now. I need a job. I need to maintain my current lifestyle, which requires a lot of money. So, whatever it is, I am here now and will make the best of my situation. I told Uncle George about how I was being treated by the family, as if I were a pariah, and he seemed really sad. But he informed me that this is exactly what happened to him, and that I too will get over it with time. Or perhaps I am luckier than him because I am from a younger generation, and they may contact me in the future. But until then, I'll have to tough it out and live with it. I asked him again what had happened to cause all of this, but he refused to discuss it. My mother is still not speaking to me, which hurts the most. But I've been texting her every day and haven't received a response yet. I'm going to be really busy with work over the next several days because I'm new here and have a lot of stuff to catch up on. If she wants to talk to me, she can text me directly. Aside from that, I won't be contacting her anymore. Update 2. Hello, it's been 6 days since I started working with Uncle George, and things are going nicely. The paperwork to make me a partner in the company is still being processed, but I completely trust him. So far, he has treated me with nothing except kindness and respect, and I suppose I must admit that everyone in my family was mistaken about him. He has been quite open with me about everything that is going on. He has informed me that, unlike my former company, they are not a private corporation, thus he will have to have the board of directors to approve everything involving me before I can finalize anything. But he advised me not to worry about it because, as the owner and CEO, it is only a formality at best, and I have nothing to worry about. Since I've already met the majority of the company's employees, and they all appear to like me. Besides, they know about my prior work and know that I am worth it. I'm not too concerned about this scenario and will just focus on working, as Uncle George said. So things are going nicely at work for me. But, to be honest, my personal life is a complete mess right now. My mother and I haven't spoken since that last discussion, and I'm not sure how many days have passed since then. I've been so lonely. Nobody else in the family has spoken to me either, which is difficult. But I am simply trying to deal with it. I still have a few friends from Uncle Blake's company, and they have kept me up to date on what is going on. They apparently publicized that I had left them, but they did not mention that I had departed to work with Uncle George, most likely because it would reflect poorly on the company if someone in my position quit to work for their direct competitors. They also announced that Dean would take over as CEO in a few months once Uncle Blake retired, and that he would become a partner in the corporation. They're throwing a work party in his honor in a few days. The CFO post, which was vacant when I departed, is being filled by one of the workers who had always had subordination issues with me. They probably did it on purpose simply to irritate me. It just made me sorry for them. If that employee had problems with me, I'm confident she will have problems with them in the future as well. But that's their problem today. Anyway, I met with my coworkers and told them that they were welcome to join me and Uncle George now that we could offer them higher pay. Ultimately, it is up to them, but I can see that some of them are eager to work with me because they are concerned about the company's current changes. They believe it is preferable for them to stop while they are ahead. So I've made the offer. Let's see who accepts. Update 3. Hey, it's been over a month since I started working with Uncle George, and things have been going wonderfully. I am now officially the CFO and a partner in the firm. I'm really pleased with it, and even though my mother is still not speaking to me, I believe I've moved on. Another piece of good news is that some of my pals from my old employer have quit their jobs and applied here to work with me, which Uncle George is thrilled with. This move, however, has irritated Uncle Blake even more. He showed up at my house with Dean a few days earlier, after nearly 4 employees had quit to join us. I had just returned home when they began ringing the doorbell, and when I realized it was them, I chatted with them over the intercom. I told them to leave because I didn't want to discuss anything with them. I knew they were here to discuss the fact that I had spoken with a couple of employees and persuaded them to join me. But I assured them that I had not pushed or compelled anyone to do anything. They had made this decision on their own, and I knew they were looking for an excuse to blame me, but even they saw that it was not my fault. Uncle Blake was out of control, and he began yelling at me from outside the door, claiming that I was poaching staff from them, which was simply unfair, and that he would take legal action against me for influencing his employees. I'm quite sure that's not grounds for a lawsuit, but I just let him scream himself hoarse because I knew there was no use in saying anything to him if he couldn't hear me. When he finally appeared to run out of steam, I informed him that I needed him to leave because otherwise they would force my hand and call the cops. And already, so many people were leaving the company. I'm quite sure they didn't want additional people to go because they appeared to be mentally ill. When I said that, Dean suddenly spoke out, saying that this was not the way to treat someone who had been there for me for so long after my father died. He labeled me insensitive and selfish, claiming that I had no regard for what his father had done for my family. I considered the entire thing arrogant and absurd. I told him that I appreciated Uncle Blake as much as he did me. I also told him that my father had worked very hard to get this firm to where it is now, and that following his death, I had worked very hard as well. Dean was the only person who had never done anything, thus he had no right to speak up about this. At the very least, Uncle Blake was deserving of his current position. But Dean only obtained his job as a kind of charity because Uncle Blake didn't want him to leave the company and work somewhere else because it was a family business. Then I went on to tell him exactly what Uncle Blake had said when he told me he was offering Dean the post of CEO since he had begged for it and would not accept anything less. In my original post, I indicated that my uncle told me that the only reason he was offering this position to Dean rather than me was because his son wanted it. And, while knowing that I deserved it more, he wanted to please his son. He also stated that Dean would merely be the nominal leader, while I would actually manage the show. I remembered it clearly, and I told Dean so he knew where he stood with his father, and suddenly there was silence. I heard them bickering softly, and then I heard footsteps as they walked away and drove out of the driveway. So my task was finished. Now the two of them could fight, but at least they'd leave me alone. The next day, I awoke to find that both of them had blocked me, which made me extremely happy. Anyway, things are going better now. I'm sure whatever is going on right now would have made my father very furious, but at least I know it's not my fault. Uncle Blake grew greedy and kicked me out, thus he is to blame for the issue. I'm extremely clear about it now, so no one can try to guilt trip me into doubting myself again. My mother is the one person I still have hope for. I truly hope she comes around eventually, since she and I have always had a terrific relationship, and after my father died, we were even closer. I absolutely miss her every day, and I keep hoping that she will text me someday. But so far, I've had no such luck. At least she hasn't blocked me yet, so perhaps she is keeping the door open. I might contact her if I start missing her too much. But for the time being, I'm still not sure what to do. Update 4. Hello everyone, it's been about 6 months since my previous update, and a lot has changed. For starters, Uncle Blake has officially retired and Dean has taken over the business. So far, he's basically keeping the status quo and doing nothing different. Maybe things may work out for them after all, but it doesn't matter to me. Since then, many former employees have migrated to us, which makes me extremely glad because I get to see a lot of familiar people at my new workplace. My mother and I have yet to speak, but I think I may have figured out why. A few weeks back, I was having dinner and drinks with Uncle George and his wife. After a while, my aunt left the room to relax, and while we were chatting, I finally questioned him. Because I was now very grown up and we were working together, I felt like I really needed to know what had transpired between him and the family that had resulted in him being cut off. He finally told me. Years ago, my mother attempted to initiate an affair with him. She invited him to help her in the kitchen on the day of Thanksgiving dinner, which was hosted at our place. He followed her, having no notion what would happen. But once they were alone in the kitchen, she informed him she wanted to take things a step further with him, and despite being married to my father, her gaze was always drawn to him. He tried to move away from her, But just in time, my father entered the kitchen and spotted the two of them standing so close. My mother freaked out and accused him of attempting to start anything with her. I don't remember this because Dean and I were in our respective rooms. But my father lost his passion and booted him out of the house that day. Later, they informed me that Uncle George had to depart because he had an emergency at work. However, following that day, my mother made up a slew of other stories to cover up the incident so that no one would believe him, including telling Uncle Blake and my father that he had planned to take money from the corporation and establish his own business. My father and Uncle Blake confronted him about this later, telling him that if he would not move aside on his own, they would ruin his life. So he decided to leave the corporation and launch his own business. Since then, he has had no contact with his family. After learning about all of this, I thought it was best for me to follow in his footsteps and avoid my family as well. It was heartbreaking to learn about my mother, but it is what it is. I accepted the facts, and this is now my life.